Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Inuit have been blockading the airstrip to Nunavut's Mary River iron ore mine for several days. The issue, the mine wants to double production and is currently trying for regulatory approval. Kent Driscoll explains.
You wouldn't know it from looking at Pond Inlet on a beautiful high Arctic Monday morning, but there is a lot of turmoil under the surface of this sleepy-looking town. The Mary River iron ore mine is located about 160 kilometers south of Pond Inlet, Nunavut. Since Thursday night, a group of Inuit have blocked the runway and the road that they use to access iron ore. The protesters have a satellite phone and called home to explain. The timing of this action is crucial. The Nunavut Impact Review Board was holding hearings in Pond Inlet about approving an expansion for the mine. It calls for production to double and for a railway to be built. So while the protest at the mine was ongoing, the hearings were happening too. This is what greeted officials in Pond Inlet on Friday night as they left the meeting. More protest, this time right in the community. At the mine site, the protesters say their regional Inuit association, the Kikitani Inuit Association, are supporting the mine expansion. And that's why they had to stop it. Back in Pond Inlet, Saturday was the one day of the 2-week-long hearing where regular community members and the general public could give statements.
Bafflement says no have taken place. From our observation, no way. When there's ship traffic, mammals start to move away.
So I'm asking you, can you slow down? We're not trying to close down Mary River, but can you slow down your proposal?
And as of today, the protesters remain at Mary River. No planes can come and go, and no iron ore is moving, leaving 700 people at the mine with little to do. Reinforcements and support are being organized in Pond Inlet and Arctic Bay. And for now, the Inuit protesters seem to have the upper hand. After all, they're in their backyard. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
An update to that. The protests ended, at least for the time being, on Thursday when people blocking the airstrip were served with a court injunction and agreed to meet with mining company officials this weekend. We'll have more on this story in the coming days. Well, Migma lobster fishers who were attacked while exercising a treaty right last fall say internal Department of Fisheries documents obtained by APTN expose systemic racism in the bureaucracy and in law enforcement. Here's a reaction to a story that Brett Forrester broke for us earlier this week.
It's racism at its finest. It ain't gonna go away. That'll never go away.
This was Migma fisherman Jason Marr's reaction to an APTN report he called unnerving. The report delved into hundreds of obtained documents showing law enforcement knew September protests against the Migma could turn ugly. This officer warned colleagues vigilante actions were planned. The Coast Guard believed it was, quote, likely that protests would turn violent. Yet, as the violence unfolded at sea, followed by attacks on land, fishery officers were told to observe, record, and report because the scene had become too dangerous. Marr later found himself barricaded inside a lobster pound. Police stood by as an angry mob raided it and stole his lobsters. Then they burnt it to the ground.
They allowed it to happen. And I believe they'll continue to allow it to happen. If we were there tomorrow, they'd be there. They wouldn't come and stop it. It'd be the same thing again.
Sabaganagati Chief Mike Sack believes the records reveal systemic racism. He says Canada failed the Migma.
They definitely did fail our people. Maybe the joke is on us for expecting anything different. You know, it's happened over and over again.
Sack was assaulted on the wharf, but before that, he pleaded with Minister Bernadette Jordan for protection. He says the records confirm what was obvious at the time.
And the RCMP are reaching out to DFO, and DFO wouldn't even return their calls. So internally, if you have the left hand don't know what the right hand is doing, when we reached out to the minister and we spoke about things were going on the ground, they're like, no, there's DFOs in the area and they're underwater, and we're standing on the wharf looking out and there's no DFO. So for us, it's the bureaucracy is horrible, right? And
APTN requested interviews with Jordan and multiple federal politicians for this story. They all declined. Instead, Jordan's office sent us a statement. It said extra Mounties were brought in response to the conflict in southwestern Nova Scotia, and 25 charges have since been laid. Brett Forster, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The whole story about that internal government report APTN obtained can be found on our website, aptnnews.ca. Well, Tataskweyak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba has been under a drinking water advisory since 2017. Now the community says they want the United Nations to pressure the federal government into taking action. Daryl Stranger has more.
Tataskweyak Cree Nation is one of many communities throughout Canada that is under a drinking water advisory. In 2019, the community launched a class action lawsuit, and that action was certified in July of 2020. Now, the community is calling on the United Nations to help with their water crisis. The community has written a letter to the UN Special Rapporteurs.
Canada's inaction has left TCN no choice to bring this to the United Nations. You know, our children, our members are still getting sick from the water. And I feel that, you know, it's Canada's responsibility and duty to provide to all First Nations. And clean drinking water is one of them.
Rapporteurs conduct fact-finding missions to countries to investigate allegations of human rights violations. The community often buys bottled water as they do not trust the water in the area. Those who do drink the water often develop skin problems such as rashes. NDP MP Nikki Ashton hopes this call for international help spurs the federal government into action.
If they won't be moved by their own failure, if they won't be moved by a class action lawsuit, hopefully being shamed on the international stage will force them to act. Let's be clear. This is a pattern of this government. They've been sued for a lack of funding for First Nations children in care over their failure to get clean drinking water. It begs the question, how many lawsuits will it take for the federal government to respect their human rights obligations to First Nations?
Tataskweyak conducted 2 water studies at their own expense in 2018 and 2019 for the water they get from Split Lake. According to the community's lawyer, the results showed the water treatment plant is unable to treat the various bacteria in the water, which includes E. coli contamination and 3 types of blue-green algae which produce toxins harmful to humans.
The water treatment plant is not designed to remove all of those toxins. And as Ms. Ashton mentioned, the current testing regime does not test for all of them. And so part of the effort has been to work with the federal government to put in place a testing regime that will address the concerns that are raised by the studies that Tataskweyak Cree Nation commissioned.
According to Indigenous Services Canada, as of January 26th, there are currently 57 long-term drinking water advisories in 39 communities. APTN reached out to Indigenous Services Canada for comment, but did not hear back as of airtime. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
2 First Nations in southern Alberta have joined together to challenge that province after its decision this past summer to rescind a policy that protects certain regions from open-pit coal mining. Now Alberta has announced that the policy is back. Tamara Pimentel explains how that's going to affect First Nations.
What we're doing today, keeping the 1976 coal policy in place and committing to consult on a modernized policy, is what we should have done in the beginning.
Alberta's Energy Minister Sonia Savage says she admits the province made a mistake when it rescinded the 1976 coal policy this past June.
This government will not allow coal developments to jeopardize the mountains, headwaters, foothills.
The policy has been reinstated after the Blood Tribe and Siksika Nation launched a legal challenge against the province for cancelling the policy in the first place. The 1976 coal policy was created to protect these areas in blue, their lands along the eastern slopes of the Rockies that border First Nations communities.
They are completely silencing any First Nation opposition.
Founder of Nitsitapi Water Protectors, Latasha Kaffrobe, says reinstating the policy is a step in the right direction, but the announcement failed to address Indigenous concerns.
The Alberta government is definitely responding to a certain demographic of people standing up. They are responding to Albertans, they are responding to hikers and hunters and all of those that are worried about campsites. All of that is true and very important things to protect, but the Alberta government is not responding to First Nations opposition. They are not making commitments to meaningful consultation. They are not making commitments to uphold treaty right.
APTN was unable to reach leadership from both communities, but Kaffrobe, a member of the Blood Tribe, is calling for more than a policy to be put in place.
A policy is only a promise, and until there's further protection put in place over these areas of land, further protection put in place over First Nations treaty rights, treaty and Aboriginal rights, and further protection put in place to protect the headwaters, these areas will remain unsafe and at continuous risk.
There are other areas that are potential sites for proposed projects. Kaffrobe says she's preparing a petition asking for the federal government to conduct a regional environmental assessment for those projects.
What this has made apparent is that our waters, our lands, our livelihood, they are still not safe.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
A couple from the Haisla Nation in British Columbia is suing Northern Health and two hospitals. Sarah Morrison may have been in labor when she was forced to get herself from a hospital in Kitimat to Terrace. In the end, her baby died. They've hired a lawyer and filed a statement of claim. APTN's Kathleen Martins has the documents, and she spoke with us from Kitimat.
Kathleen, thanks for being with us. Can you quickly take us through the events of what happened here?
For sure. A young couple here from Haisla Nation. They were expecting their first baby together. They went to the Kitimat General Hospital, where a doctor wouldn't see them, suggested they go, advised them really to go to the next bigger community, Terrace, and give birth there. They couldn't get on an ambulance, wouldn't take them. So Sarah's father drove them. It's about 45 minutes. The baby had a strong heartbeat in Kitimat, but during the trip seems to have suffered some kind of an event, and when Sarah gave birth several hours later in Terrace, the child was stillborn.
Kathleen, what are the parents alleging in their statement of claim?
Right, so they've hired a lawyer. They filed a lawsuit that we obtained a copy of the statement of claim exclusively, APTN used, and they are saying that it's a combination of racism and negligence by doctors and even the ambulance service in Kitimat and Terrace that led to the death of their daughter.
Now, Kathleen, are the hospitals or the Northern Health, are they speaking at all?
Well, because when the baby initially died, this was at the end of January, that prompted an internal review, and now that there's a lawsuit, they're not commenting at all. They have been served. That's a standard practice when a patient dies, and so that's both the Northern Health Authority that oversees the hospitals and the Emergency Services organization that oversees the ambulance.
Well, Kathleen, it's a troubling story. Hope the family gets some answers. Appreciate your reporting on this and speaking with us here today.
Thank you, Dennis.
You can see more on that story by going to aptnnews.ca. Well, we've got to take a break, but when we come back, COVID vaccine updates. Stay with us. Welcome back. Indigenous Services Canada confirms that COVID-19 cases are continuing to drop in First Nations communities. But as Jamie Pashagumskim reports, with limited vaccines in Canada, some communities are going to just have to hold on.
The numbers have spoken. The second wave is subsiding.
We are continuing to see positive signs that the curve is beginning to bend. The rate of active cases in First Nations communities in Canada has decreased by more than 50% over the past 3 weeks.
And there's optimism. The wave will continue to shrink. Vaccinations are now underway in 340 Indigenous communities, but there's still much concern variants of the virus will pose a new threat.
And of course, your next question, maybe, well, we have heard that, some of the vaccines may not actually work as well against the variants. However, there are current vaccines that actually have evidence that it is effective against the new variants. The higher the uptake of the vaccine, the more protection we can offer to communities in the coming months.
With limited vaccines coming to Canada this month, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said this could delay vaccines for southern and urban Indigenous people.
More proximate communities that, while they display essentially the same type of vulnerability by virtue of the fact that they lie a little closer to an urban center, don't have that larger access to the vaccines. That's a sort of a function of, it's a function of the limited global undersupply, but the limited supply under Q1 in Canada.
As a result, Indigenous Services said many Indigenous communities will have to double down efforts and hold on for the next few weeks or months until the Pfizer vaccine becomes available to them. Jamie Pashagumskim, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Recently, we brought you a look inside the Yukon's vaccine rollout, which is on track to vaccinate most of the adult population there by the end of March. But as APTN's Sarah Connors tells us, not everybody in the territory is eager to roll up their sleeve. Here's that story.
Thanks to mobile vaccine clinics like this one in Carcross, the Yukon is aiming to have 75% of its adult population vaccinated by the end of March. But that still leaves 25% of the population unvaccinated.
I've also had that hesitation about getting it done.
Carcross-Tagish First Nation Chief Linda Dixon admits she was reluctant to get vaccinated at first because of Moderna's speedy approval.
But in order to move forward with getting our lives back to a semi-normal, we have to do something. And, I'm okay. I took the vaccine yesterday. I have a little bit of a sore arm, a little bit of a headache, but other than that, I'm fine.
At the Whitehorse Correctional Centre, where most inmates are Indigenous, only 1/3 of the inmate population chose to be vaccinated. Viewer comments on APTN social media also shows distrust of the vaccine. As these people write, fake cure for a fake pandemic promoted by fake authority, and it's not a vaccine, it's an injection. Mathia Alatini is the COVID-19 response coordinator for the Council of Yukon First Nations. She says social media is rampant with misinformation.
There's all this weird questions around, am I going to get monkey DNA or something? Well, no, it never would have passed inspection at Health Canada.
She says disproving conspiracy theories and providing credible reading sources are key to clearing misconceptions surrounding the vaccine.
A lot of those individuals, if you can have calm conversations and be able to offer the resources that they can independently look at, or they have somebody that they can talk to, that usually alleviates some fears.
There historically has been hesitancy for something like this.
Dr. Anna Banerjee is faculty lead of Indigenous and Refugee Health at the University of Toronto. She says some of the vaccine hesitancy can be traced back to experiments that happened in residential schools.
And so these kinds of experiments, make a lot of people with good reason be wary of government interventions.
Are you going to get the vaccine?
I am absolutely going to get the vaccine.
Dr. Evan Adams of Indigenous Physicians Association of Canada says there's other reasons too.
I think others who are mistrustful of big pharmacy, mistrustful of government, mistrustful of kind of public workers, that why are they suddenly interested in my well-being when in the past they weren't?
Dr. Banerjee says calming fears about the vaccine starts at the top, and it's important for Indigenous leaders to lead by example.
If they're the first ones to get vaccinated and they can see that, you know, they're fine, there's no side effects, then that encourages more people to get vaccinated.
Banerjee says if Indigenous communities want to get back to normal, vaccines are critical, but they must be rolled out with care and understanding.
It's building trust, and I think that's what we really need. To rebuild trust.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Well, it's time for another break, but still ahead, taking inspiration from the video game Minecraft to teach kids about Anishinaabe culture. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Louis Riel School Division in Winnipeg is using the game Minecraft to teach students about Manitoba and Anishinaabe culture. Our reporter Daryl Stranger has more on the Minecraft world of Manitoaki.
It's a first-of-its-kind education tool, using a unique version of the game Minecraft to show Anishinaabe culture to students. Students enter the virtual world of Manitoba-Aki, meaning the place where the creator sits, to learn and explore Manitoba's Anishinaabe community.
We hope Manitoba-Aki also helps in a small way move forward the truth and reconciliation calls to actions in classrooms here in Manitoba and in Canada.
Students learn teachings about tobacco, navigating directions using the sun, moon, and stars, and eventually take a canoe ride to where they set up a community and take part in a bison hunt.
It has been really fun for me. I've played Minecraft my whole life, and it's fun to test something new and something exciting that they can develop into the game. It was really interesting to learn about all of their teachings and things I didn't know before. My favorite part is just being able to run around and be guided through what life was like for the Anishinaabe people.
The school division sought the help of numerous knowledge keepers and Indigenous elders in the development of the game. Anishinaabe elder and grandmother Chickadee Richard says the game is a chance to show everyone what Anishinaabe culture is about.
We have a different understanding amongst each other and our relationship to the land and all of the environments that surround us. We're an oral people, so our history comes also from our ancestors, but it also comes from the land and the ceremonies. And I feel it's important to let everyone know that we're still here, we're still intact, we're still practicing our ways, our ancient ways.
Michelik says the school division hopes to have 5 other worlds for each Indigenous peoples in Manitoba.
In the very near future, we plan to build 5 additional Minecraft worlds that will bring to life the 4 remaining First Nations that our land acknowledgement reminds us called Manitoba home long before Europeans arrived, and the Métis Nation that blossomed out of the coming together of First Nation peoples and Europeans.
The world will officially launch on February 15th. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, that is your news for this weekend. I'm Melissa Ridgen. We'll see you back here next week.